So
You.
much. This is Debbie Pfeiffer. I want to welcome you on behalf of all of our presenters today to our webinar, Resources for Educators Working Toward Continuity of Education with Children Who Are Blind or Visually Impaired. The session today, as I said, is a collaboration effort between the VI Consortium at GMU, who is hosting this WebEx, and also presenting, the Virginia Department of Education, Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, and VSDB Outreach Services. We got a great response on this registration. We have a great group of people together attending. I wish we could all be together. We have 91 people, mostly teachers of the blind and vision impaired, some of whom are also orientation and mobility specialists. We have a whole smattering of other people. We have early interventionists, early childhood special educators, state agency representatives, speech and language pathologists, assistive technology people, and lots of others. We want to let you know before I introduce the speakers, if you would like to ask questions, Kim, can you direct them on how they can ask their questions during the session?
Absolutely. So if it depends if you are on the web browser, if you opened it up through the web browser, or if you opened up through the web app. And well, first of all, if you're not speaking, you do want to mute your microphone because we will get a lot of feedback. But at the bottom right, there is a chat feature if you are on the the app that you downloaded. If not, if you are on the web browser, at the very bottom there is a series of buttons and you can tap through them, or you can go to the chat bubble. There's a chat bubble if you arrow over, and you can access the chat that way.
Thank you, Kim. What I would suggest, though, because we do have a lot of content that we want to share, if you can, to please hold your questions until the end, and then maybe we can let you voice your questions. Um, when I pull up my chat, it's in the middle of my screen, so I don't want you to miss any of the content as you're doing that. So um, after today's session, we will send out certificates for contact hours for 1.5 contact hours for the people that were attending today. I'm going to give a brief just presentation of our presenters. I think you know most of them. First of all, we have Wanda Council who will be presenting. She's our specialist in special education from Virginia Department of Education. We have Dr. Kim Avila, who's heads up the VI Consortium at GMU. And then we have Karen Phipps from the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, who leads all of the education coordinators. She's our education and pre-ETS leader at Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired. And myself, Debbie Pfeiffer, who's the Director of Outreach Services at VSDB. I'll let each person give you a little more information about themselves if they would like to. And right now, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Wanda Council from the Virginia Department of Education.
Thank you, Debbie, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We certainly know that this unprecedented circumstance that we're experiencing together across the Commonwealth of Virginia and across the country has really gotten us having to think in very innovative ways about how we connect with one another, and also in how we are providing instruction for students who are in our schools in a very different way. So we're fortunate that with the collaboration that we have this afternoon, and with you joining us, that the resources and information we provide, we hope will help you in your efforts at providing distance learning for students. So I have some information about some of the resources that are available that the Virginia Department of Education has at their website. The general website address is www.doe.virginia.gov. And on our website, on the home page, there is an actual web page link that's dedicated to COVID-19 resources. And as you see on the slide here, there's general information pertaining to frequently asked questions that is updated regularly. I was on another webinar this morning I had a meeting this morning online, and within the course of that meeting, and I referenced something on the website and saw that some more information had been updated. So if you're looking for general information, nuts to bolts, having to do with everything from graduation to students earning credits and where you can find instructional materials, our website does have some good information and some resources for you, including the general frequently asked questions document. On the next slide, there is also a specific frequently asked questions document that is specific to students with disabilities, and it's the Special Education and Student Services FAQ. And we have provided the hyperlink through this PowerPoint that you will be receiving after our webinar this afternoon, where you can go directly to that link. And these questions that are presented here are actually questions that have come from school divisions and questions that we in our office, as we've been working together, have generated to make sure that we could address what the requirements are under the federal law, under our state regulations, for ensuring that students will still receive a free and appropriate public education during these times, and how that can happen. So again, this is specific to students, serving students with all disabilities, and it's information that's on our website. In addition to that, on the next slide, we've had a wonderful group of educators that were tasked with working together along with our Board of Education and the Secretary of Education to develop some guidance, some structure, some resources for Virginia educators in working with distance learning for students. And so the Virginia Learns Anywhere initiative, there's actually a task force that developed this webpage that is full of resources that apply to any student. And for educators to use, parents can access it as well. And it just helps to put some structure around what you might focus on for students at different grade levels and with different content areas. So this is a wonderful resource. If you are interested in getting some information, it may be helpful for you as a teacher, as a service provider. It might be helpful information for you to consider in sharing with your colleagues as well, your general ed colleagues. Next slide, please. And of course, TTAC Online, which is a statewide resource that we have. You can certainly access information through TTAC Online. It also references the Virginia Learns Anywhere information within the TTAC Online website. And there are lots of updates to resources that are available. Some of them are for resources that have been developed by educators in Virginia, but also across the nation as well. Next, please. The Practical Access podcasts are also referenced in the Virginia Learns Anywhere webpage, and these are actual video podcasts that you can access, that you as educators, families can access them on various topics in providing distance learning to students, all students, and they are shown and they're available, and these are all resources that are provided at no cost. On the next slide, the Virginia TV Classroom was another collaborative initiative that the Department of Education was able to provide at no cost. This is a free service through some of the local media stations collaborated together to make sure that there were opportunities for students, for families with children where they may be limited in being able to access the internet, maybe limited access to cable television. These are through the public television stations that we have available around the country through the Commonwealth, and they are providing instructional lessons that are available for families to access. They're aired. It just started this week, and they're being aired at different times throughout the week, Monday through Friday. So there's a menu and listing what the different programs are that would be aired for students in through 10th grade. Some of the other resources that we have provided on our through our website, Go Open Virginia has some specific resources pertaining to COVID-19. These are resources that school divisions have actually developed, materials, ideas for distance learning. School divisions have provided information, and it is available for you to access. Take 10 has live streaming with 10-minute increments of content that is on different topics that go beyond just the regular content to keep children thinking and being creative. And then the What Works Clearinghouse also has some videos, different concepts such as mathematics that you can teach to young children. And these resources have videos and materials that would be appropriate for an educator to guide a parent to use with their child, or families can actually access it and may be able to utilize those resources on their own. In addition to that, we do have some, here are some links for 3 more programs that are available. The resources from the PALS, the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening, tools for an active home. We know that with children not having the freedom to engage in all of the activities that they normally would, we still have to think about them in terms of their social and emotional health and physical activity. And so there are, again, some tools, some resources, the Hip Hop Public Health. These are resources that can keep kids engaged, keep children engaged in activities that would not require them to sit specifically at a computer or watching television, but get them actively moving and thinking. And we know that all of these materials, in terms of them being available, they need to be in an accessible format, especially for our students who are blind or visually impaired. And so we are very fortunate that we continue to have our Accessible Instructional Materials Center, AIM Virginia, which, as you know, is a service of the Department of Education, and it is a center that can help assist in providing free accessible instructional materials to students with IEPs. And so we have a telephone number there, but the best way to contact someone through the center would be to use the email, the website addresses in order to send a message and to get assistance if you had a question for someone through the AIM Virginia Center. In addition to that, during the COVID-19 school closings, AIM Virginia has posted this information on their website to make sure that everyone knows that they are still able to provide accessible instructional materials for students in a digital format. They're moving in trying to make sure that they can also provide some additional resources if you are needing hard copies of documents. Primarily what they're able to do is through digital formats. And so there's information here that reflects the ability for AIM Virginia, if you have a student account, do the student accounts as you would during the school year, to be able to access those accessible materials for students who have IEPs and who are eligible for those services. It still would go through the AIM Virginia ordering portal, and that would include students who need materials, who are needing materials that need to be brailled. That actually still goes through the AIM Virginia ordering portal to the Department for the Blind and the Visually Impaired. And I know that Karen Phipps is going to address that further as we move along with the webinar today. I did want to mention also that Cindy George, who is the program coordinator for our AIM Virginia Center, is on, I believe she's on the phone and is going to be available as we conclude the webinar if there are any questions specifically for AIM Virginia. And we want to thank Cindy for joining this afternoon as well. Okay. Coronavirus information, just general information about coronavirus in terms of what you might be able to explain or resources for discussing through social stories, information about the virus to students, to children. These are some of the resources that are available that are on our website. They were resources that are provided not just for, say, an educator to have to deliver during the instruction, but a family member, a parent, could also access this information and engage in some activities, even with the brain pop that you see listed here on coronavirus, video with activities and games that you would be able to use with a student. The Center for Disease Control has also provided several different video series where they're actually using ASL, American Sign Language, in addition to the audio in the videos. And this might be helpful, particularly if you have students who are dual sensory impaired, who are blind or visually impaired, in addition who may also have hearing loss. And so these videos have been provided with ASL so that anyone who has a sensory disability in terms of accessing information, they have a series of videos pertaining to COVID-19 as well. Here are the links for additional topics centered around COVID-19. We know that we want to make sure that students, children are well informed, families are well informed, but also knowing that there are certain ways, certain topics that when you're discussing them with children, we have to make sure that we're providing them information that's appropriate for them where they are developmentally and according to their ages. And so these are some additional resources that we have been able to gather and share with you about talking with children about COVID-19. So I hope that that was some helpful information for you. And at this time, I am going to ask for Kimberly Avila to come on, and Kimberly's going to share some information with you about accessibility.
Thank you, Wanda, and thank you so much for sharing all these great resources with us and everything that we can refer back to. So I'm Kim Avila, and I coordinate the VI Consortium. At Mason, we have 5 universities, and I do want to remind you, if you have not muted your microphone or telephone, you can do so either on your device, or you can, if you're on the computer, and the keyboard command is Control-M to mute your device if you need to. And you can, of course, mute your phone on your phone as well. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about, we of course know that we have a very diverse array of students who are blind and visually impaired here in Virginia. And so there's no way we can possibly cover the extent of our students' needs and the different scenarios that you're all encountering in the next hour. So I am going to focus on virtual access for today. And I just want to make sure, you know, I know you're all aware that every student is actually going to approach their education differently during this time. So we are going to talk about virtual access. And I fully realize, I'm a parent, by the way. I have 2 kids who are VI. You know, some of you know my kids, some of you have worked with my kids, and I've been an educator for 22 years. I've taught through Mason via web conference for 11 years. And this morning I was helping my 9th grade daughter who has low vision on some assignments that her teachers posted on Google Classroom, and I was, you know, trying to be helpful, and she had a very patient attitude for, like, you know, the first 6,000 questions I asked. And then finally, I just asked that one other question, and she said, "Well, Mom, that's a stupid question." So it doesn't matter how experienced we are and how much we have behind us and in teaching. There is going to be, you know, there's going to be that moment where you just don't get something, and that happens. But I want to let you all know, you know, we're in a tricky time right now, but there is a silver lining on this cloud. So for those of us at the university level, we have And I do hear a dog or something in the background, so if you're not muted, if you could please mute. So so I still hear a doggy. I love the doggy, but you know. So we, at the university level, we get a diverse array of students with special needs and blindness and vision impairment that come up through the system. And we have some people who come up who are really skilled with their technology. We have a number of students who come up who aren't. They may know those couple of keyboard commands. They might know a few, you know, things here and there, but they don't know really everything. Even if you're in a face-to-face class, so much of what you submit is going to be through Blackboard, Canvas, or any of the other digital management systems. And our education is moving toward more online access regardless, even if you're an on-campus student. And so I've always wished that our kids who are blind or visually impaired had opportunities to take more online classes and work through this technology. And I'm sorry because I wished for it and it's coming true. It has come true. Our kids have to access things electronically, but I really see this as a perfect transition activity for all of our kids. Even if it just means they're learning to log on and log off, even if it just, you know, there's little steps here. And I just feel like in the next few years, we're going to see kids who are blind and visually impaired who are going to really master this process. And that transition between high school and college, where things are much more electronic, is going to be very, very pronounced. And so there is a silver lining here. So I do want to make sure that anything we say here, you do need to yield to your school system for specific guidance. So nothing I say overrules anything that your school system is saying. So whatever the policy is, some of you may be tuning in from out of state. I don't know. It's going to be different everywhere. Every county's doing things differently too. So please yield to them for policy. The biggest thing I want to make sure, if you are connecting with your students, you do want to have a FERPA compliant method to do so, and each county is going to define that differently. So I just did my FERPA training renewal for Mason a couple days ago, and they said Google Docs is not FERPA compliant. Google thinks they're FERPA compliant. Other agencies may or may not define it as FERPA compliant. So I'm told at Mason I have to use our Microsoft Office suite and not the Google Docs and whatnot. So please yield to your school system for communication methods for FERPA compliance. The other, I know that a lot of our school systems are using web conference, and being someone that's taught through web conference for so many years, I know there's security problems, and I just want to tell you one way that I try to ensure we don't get unwanted visitors in our class. And I teach through Collaborate Ultra, which some school systems are using. So I've taught through Ultra for a number of years. And my students have to log in through Blackboard. They have to go to that week's course. So my weeks are labeled, weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. They have to go into Ultra that way. They have to be signed in with their name. I rarely share out guest links. I only share it with presenters who I know and trust. And then I also only share it if I have a student who legitimately could not get in, or they're brand new to the program and they've not been able to get their Mason credentials. When we share out links like the link we shared out today, I don't know, there can be some people on here that, okay, they got it some other way. So that is my advice. Of course, it's not foolproof, but we don't want visitors coming in the class who don't belong there, because that can be a huge problem. So for you as TVIs, if you do have a student in a one-on-one situation, the student really, if they have a computer or a laptop that the school provided, a lot of our kids are going to need that administrative override, and I know that's going to be virtually impossible right now. But I really encourage, you know, our school systems to really think closely about the administrative rights that are on our computers, because the administrative rights are sometimes limiting in that our kids can't change settings. And I certainly understand they may not be able to install things because we want to monitor that, but even changing some of the keyboard command settings. For example, one of the cases that was shared with me, the student couldn't use the Windows key. And those of you who know keyboard commands, we use the Windows key a lot with our keyboard commands because it had administrative override on there. And that is a challenge. That's a huge problem. So our kids are going to need that provision. So especially next year and going forward, think about how can your school system manage administrative overrides so our students can change settings and use some of those other features that maybe they couldn't in the past. I really encourage each of you to get onto your students' classrooms if you can communicate with their teachers and the administration at your school. Be part of that Blackboard classroom, that Google Classroom, whatever it is that your school system is using. It's gonna help a lot. And then, you know, we're starting online ed. We had one day of online ed this week. I printed out our schedules. They're taped all over our house because our kids are online at different times. We have we set reminders in our phone. So my kids, they learned last week how to set up their calendars and how to set up reminders and alerts because, you know, they're on for 45 minutes, then off for an hour and on for 40. And it gets confusing for all of us. So again, a great transition activity. Even if your student doesn't have a phone, even if they don't have a device, how can they manage this schedule? If your kids are going online, how can they manage the schedule and all those appointments? So one thing that I do with my classes, because there's, you know, we have a diverse group of students in the VI consortium. We have people who are very skilled with technology, and regardless of that background, every faculty member, every teacher sets up their online environment very differently. And this happens at the university level. We need to use Blackboard at Mason, but everybody sets it up differently. So I do for everybody, I do a video and a recording orienting everybody to the way that I set it up and where they can find everything. And then I include keyboard commands, I include navigation cues, because I do have people who use assistive technology in my classes. And this reduces those 6 million questions down to a manageable few, because it doesn't matter even if they're disabled or not. We have people who, you know, they just need that orientation to that online environment. And for my fellow O&M instructors on right now, you know, we often at the beginning of the year, we spend a great deal of time orienting our kids to their new schools, to their classrooms. Our online environment is no different. Okay, there's a perimeter. Things are organized, whether it's in columns and rows, whether it's in a circular pattern, whether it's some creative way that a teacher has designed their online classroom. So our kids really need orientation to those environments. And so do my students coming in as graduate students. They also need that orientation to their environment as well. And it really does help. So when you are teaching your student, you know, we talk a lot about keyboard commands if they're using screen readers and screen enlargement and refreshable braille displays. But I want you to really also focus on that navigation around, okay, around that classroom. How do we navigate? So when I teach Ultra to my students, I teach them the mouse way, of course. I teach them how to use the tab key. And those of you who've taken JAWS lessons with me, you know that I call the tab key the steering wheel because we're steering around Ultra with our tab key. And then I also teach keyboard commands. Okay, so in Ultra, the mute keyboard command is different than the one in WebEx here. So I just want to make sure that everybody, you know, you think about that same principle. We have to orient our students. We have to teach them navigation around their classrooms as well. So last night I did a national presentation for the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation with parents, and they kept talking about, oh my gosh, my kids, eye fatigue, you know, the way they're sitting and reading, and they're on their devices so much more. It's a real problem, and we all know it's going to be a problem. So I really encourage you as a TVI, one way you can support that family is helping to make sure that that child's setup is ergonomic and it's something sustainable for that child to spend that amount of time to do their classwork. So whether you're teaching them, so like I said, you know, I have 2 kids who are VI. We each have our own computer. We have our monitors on arms. So we can position the monitor, each of our monitors at the height. So we are sitting up straight. We have our keyboards at an ergonomic height, so we're not putting stress on our wrists and arms. If you have a student who is using a brailler, some of the families may not be as keen to understanding that painful fatigue that you can get when you braille for so long, but you're in a bad ergonomic position. So if you're allowed to, if your school allows, you know, having the family send you pictures of the setup, because when I heard from these families yesterday about the fatigue element, some are braille readers, some are vision using their eyesight. You know, there are things we can do. We can change the glare on the computer. We can change the contrast. We can change so much, but we can also work on that ergonomic setup. We can have the families think about glare. So for those families with kids with albinism yesterday, I talked a lot about reducing that glare that comes in because from outside sources and from LED lights and things. And then you probably all know about the 20-20-20 type rule. For every 20 minutes we spend looking at our devices, we should spend 20 seconds looking 20 feet away to help reduce some of that eye fatigue and whatnot. So the next thing I want to cover is about accessibility. And on screen, I have a slide that says accessibility is everybody's responsibility, everyone's responsibility. And what I'm hearing a lot, and what I hear continually, is the TBVI has to retrofit accessibility into the platforms, into the students' work. And the fact of the matter is, we can help our teachers author accessible content and make it accessible to everybody. So we can have a high school with 2,500 students. Our student is in general ed, they're blind, they're low vision, whatever. And sometimes we hear school systems that say, well, this is only the only VI kid we have. Why do we have to do all this? I really want to encourage you to help people understand why accessibility benefits everybody. If you have kids with dyslexia, convergence insufficiency, learning disabilities, reading disabilities, other print disabilities, kids who need increased space, kids who need less clutter, the full gamut, we're not just talking about that one student out of the 2,500 at that school. We are actually talking about a few hundred students who benefit from accessible content. So accessibility is a huge concept. I was teaching my class last night for Mason, and I completely overwhelmed my poor students because I get so excited about this, but there's so much here and I can't cover it all. So I'm just going to give you some key points. We need to think about accessibility from the get-go, from when products are developed initially. We don't have control over if a company chooses to make something inaccessible. We can work with our counties not to purchase that device, but we are in the situation we're in now. So what I think we need to focus on is making sure that documents that our teachers produce are accessible, things that are being posted. And so on screen, I have underlined document production and distribution as a really key element that we need to focus on right now. So I am going to tell you about a few situations that I've encountered. Actually, this is not a few. This happens all the time. Some things where inaccessible documents have been provided, and people have asked me, well, Kim, how do I braille this? How do I, it's completely inaccessible. And one challenge that I see occur very commonly is oftentimes teachers will create their document in Word or Google Docs or whatever they create it in, and then they save it as an image or they save it as an inaccessible PDF. And that really puts us in a predicament as the TBVI because we have to go back in there and OCR it. We have to pull out that text. I mean, it just makes it really easier if we can have the documents from the get-go. I've seen people scan documents as an image in a PDF, and that's not going to be accessible to our kids. I've seen people scan from their copy machine at school, which they're not going to be doing as much now, but maybe from their scanner at home, they're scanning from their machines and they're saving it as an image. And that's a huge problem. So anytime we can get that primary source document from the teacher, it's going to be really helpful. We can have, you all know this, we can take that content, we can put it into Duxbury as text, we can put it into Duxbury, we can send it off as that BRF, that Braille Ready format. If our student has a Braille display, we can emboss it up in Word or whatever. We can change the font, we can change the presence of the visual clutter and all of that. But so I really want to encourage that just saving things as images is not accessible. And one recent example I want to give is a class schedule. Obviously, the teacher made the class schedule in Word or Excel, columns and rows, perfectly beautiful, but then saved it as a screenshot and then sent it out. So that is a challenge because my student who's blind will not be able to navigate that image to figure out when they're supposed to be in an online class. So that's something to keep in mind. So I'm going to just give you some basics of accessibility, hopefully just to get you started. I'm just going to give you some very basics here. If you want to learn more, Microsoft has a program called Training Teachers to Author Accessible Content. I do have it linked in our PowerPoint. You can go through this. You can encourage your teachers to do this as well. And again, this is VI, our kids who are blind and visually impaired, but all of our other students who benefit from accessible content as well. And I'm going to, on the last page here, my husband is an accessibility programmer, and he has done several presentations over the past month about accessible online presentations, creating accessible emails and social media, and creating accessible digital documents. And so he's much more skilled than I am anyway. So this is also a resource to help get you started to understand this. But I want to just show you, I'm going to show you on my screen, I have a document open, and I'm going to show you a typical thing that comes across my desk as a TBVI or whatnot. And one of the first things, so here I have our 5th grade teacher is doing a review on light energy that the teacher has sent out to the students to review these concepts of light energy. And in the document, the teacher provided, it's an image. And I know this is an image because I can't select text. Okay, if I had JAWS on here, JAWS would be, like image number 5559, blah, 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 blah. It's going to be saying all that kind of stuff, and it's not going to read this to my student who's blind. But also for my kid who has low vision, this is blurry. For my students' parents who aren't seeing very well, because myopia is plaguing all of us, this is going to be really hard to access. In fact, this is completely inaccessible. So this particular example, and I just made this up, like I'm not, this isn't something that really happened. I'm just making this particular situation up, but I see this happen a lot. We have our document here, and I suspect that this maybe came from the internet because part of the image did say it was like some SOL website or something like that. So our teacher probably just pasted the image in here just to be succinct, and then the teacher asks some questions below. So one thing I can do is that TBVI, I'm going to go over, I found this on the internet, and actually I saved it as the image just to be the bad example. But here we have a website. It does have text. I can select it. So I can take this text and I can provide it to my student. But what I'm doing here as the TBVI is I am retrofitting accessibility in here. So we really want to get away from saving content as images. Sometimes we have images of tactile, we have graphics, and actually this particular webpage has lots of graphics. So of course you as a TBVI, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get out my wiki sticks, I'm going to get out my yarn, I'm going to get out all my fancy things that I have, and I'm going to make these tactile for our kids. You can do image descriptions now. If you're allowed to mail stuff to your student, you certainly can if that's okay with your school system. But, we want to make sure they have access to the content and text. So a couple things I can do. I can either share the website with my student. I will tell you, so I have this website here. I have something called the Wave toolbar installed on as a Chrome extension. I can go here and I can very quickly assess the accessibility of this website. I do notice it has 15 accessibility errors, which is a problem, but at least I have some content here. What I really think, what I would encourage is instead of saving these as images for everybody, is copying out the text, okay, and putting it in that document. So that's exactly what I did here. I put the text in. So if I have a student with low vision, if they want this in 18 font, they can put it in 18 font. I could take this text, I could put it into Duxbury, I could braille it up, I could send it as that BRF and all that good stuff. So images of things, and I'm not kidding, I see this all the time, and my students bring me things like this all the time. Things are sent as images and they're just not accessible. So this is one thing we can do. Another thing in your document, so let's say, so I actually have in this document an example. This is my advanced Braille class. This is our course schedule for this semester. So right now we're working through our Nemeth unit. So when we have really big complex tables, you're going to want to make sure that you have something called row repeater on. So that means at the top of this document, we are going to go to that first line of this table, and I'm going to do something. I'm going to go to my table properties, and then I already have repeat as row header at the top. This really helps our students when they're navigating. This is a long table because we have a 15-week semester, so it's a very, very long table. That way they don't have to go back to the beginning of the entire table to know what column they're in. So that's another easy way to integrate some accessibility. One thing that we also really encourage people to do is to use something called headings. Okay, so headings help a student navigate a document. They help find the important information really quickly. They help our students locate the necessary content that they need to get to. And so for this document that I took the text out of from this image, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this a with some headings. So one thing I could do is I could, preface this by saying light, energy, packet. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go up to my styles, and then I'm going to make that a level 1 heading. And then I want to change where it says waves and particles, I'm going to change that to a level 2 heading. And if you're not familiar with the benefit of headings, if this were a really big packet and I had a screen reader user or somebody who really needed to help navigate that document, they're going to be able to go to their navigation pane for headings, and they're going to be able to access those headings a lot quicker. So if you have headings programmed in, they will show up there. So I do want to go back to, where was I at? So those are just, so there's a lot. There's a lot that goes on with document accessibility. We do want to really focus on getting away from those images. If there are images, obviously there's going to be a lot of pictures and things in some notebooks and some lesson plans. We can add alt text to it. We can also add descriptions. And I don't have enough time to show you all that because I'm over my time as it is right now, which is the problem. But if you go to these resources, they're going to help you learn some of these, especially that Microsoft author, training teachers to author accessible content, and then some of the others. So I get a lot of questions also. I do want to talk about PDFs just very briefly because I save things as PDFs all the time in my classes. There's things that I format that I have to save in a PDF. And when you save a PDF, I use an Adobe Professional version. And there is a check mark in there that says, enable screen reader access. You always want to make sure that is checked. And yes, we have people who uncheck that box, which is not fair. But people often wonder, if I just save something as a PDF, is it still accessible? And the question is, well, maybe, maybe not. So when we save something as a PDF, it depends on what was in there, and it depends on how you made that. So if you made it out of an image, it's not going to be accessible. So I used to do registrations through PDFs through the VI consortium. So I had forms my students had to fill out, and it took my programmer husband to help me make those accessible because it is that hard. Like, it's that challenging. We have to label the form fields. We have to make sure the reading order is correct. And every semester I would break my form because I would make edits to it. And then he had to come in, either he or ATI at Mason had to come in and help me make that accessible. So PDF accessibility is not as straightforward as we would like it to be. The difference is Microsoft Word, you can run an accessibility checker on documents, which will give you a basic idea about the level of accessibility. PDF does have accessibility checkers, but they're really involved. If you're just saving text, like if you're saving a reading and things like that, sometimes the reading order will be out of order in a PDF, and you actually have to go into the document and you have to tag reading order. So PDF accessibility does have a lot more involved, and of course I am way out of time, but I just want to let you know that about PDF. And I use them all the time too, and I know a lot of you, your teachers, use PDFs as well, but there are some accessibility elements to consider with PDF. Doesn't mean they're automatically accessible if they come from text. Okay, so I'm over my time, so I'm going to let Karen take over.
Kim,
Hi.
no, Kim, go ahead and finish. You only have
No,
2 or 3 more.
Yes, yeah.
So like I could talk for 6 or 7 hours. You really want me to finish?
Yeah,
This is important.
Okay, let me just show you how to do some alt text,
go
okay?
right ahead.
I'll just I talked briefly about alt text. So let's say, okay, so we're going to go back to this light and energy packet, which is a 5th grade SOL. And I'm going to go back to that website because, as I pointed out, they have some really good graphics here. So this is going to be definitely harder. There's on screen, I have a picture of it, says transverse waves, and it has a straight line with waves going up and down beneath the baseline and above the baseline, and it talks about the wavelength and the crest and the trough and all that stuff. And let's say my teacher, they had to paste a picture in this document here. So I'm going to paste that picture of this wavelength, and let's just pretend they went to crop and they're just going to have that wavelength picture. Maybe our teacher, you know, they did everything in text like we like them to do, but you know, how are you going to make this picture? So here we have our 5th graders are going to evaluate this particular graphic about transverse waves. So the first thing I need to do, if this is coming to my student in a document, I need to add alt text. And I'm working on a PC. If you're working on a Mac, it's going to be a different procedure. So I'm working on Microsoft Word and a PC. I highlight my image. I make sure my image is selected. I'm just going to right click on that. Or if you're using a keyboard command, you can use the application key. And then you can go down to edit alt text. Okay, so if you didn't see where that was at, alt text, if you right click, edit alt text, at least on my version, it's here. And I can put in alt text. So I can put in transverse wave diagram. Okay, diagram, there we go. Okay, so I have some alt text. So at very minimum right now, if I were running JAWS, it would, or NVDA or whatever, it would at least tell my student what this graphic is. Now, obviously, there's some important information that's being conveyed in this graphic. So I need to convey that to my students. So if we were in our school systems, you all know you would pull out your wiki sticks and your P-off machine, and you would make a beautiful graphic, but maybe you can't do that right now because they didn't let us take our P-offs home anyway. I had to leave mine at campus too. So so I can also put a image description here. I can discuss, so I can, you know, say like image description, and I can type in precisely the information that's conveyed here, at least just to get my students started so they understand this. And so on. And, you know, I may have to work with the parents to convey this information as well, but alt text is really helpful just for labeling that image, just so one, so JAWS doesn't read it as this crazy number thing, and then 2, so our students can access that, that image and at least know what was there, and then we can provide supplemental information there as well. I did also have, so that little website that I showed you a little bit ago, so here's this website with the text, this, you know, grade 5 light energy unit review type packet. These are wonderful, by the way. These have great reviews, just really succinct. And even though we're not taking SOLs this semester, you know, still really good stuff. But what I did is I was a naughty teacher and I saved it as a PDF. So what I ended up doing is I went to the save on this website, and then I saved it as a PDF. And what it did is it saved it as a image. So if this PDF were to be sent to my student who's blind or visually impaired or otherwise print disabled, this is going to be a real problem for my student to access. So that's why we need to have those alternatives. That's why we also need to save these PDFs as not as images. But if this does happen, you know, and let's say we don't have that website to go to extract that text, there's a few things you can do. So when you do get, and I know you TVIs know this because you've had a deal, but I've known TVIs who sat there in Duxbury and retyped the entire thing. So please don't do that. There's some apps you can use to extract text. There's Text Grabber. One thing, I have Adobe Professional. And this has a built-in optical character reader program in it. So I can run that OCR and I can try to extract that text, but you all know that it's going to make mistakes, so I have to go back through. I also have on my work computer, which I do not have home with me, and we are banished from campus. I have Abby Fine Reader, which is one of my favorite OCRs. So I could use that Abby Fine Reader to extract that text from here. But again, this just is so much easier. You know, if this is a beautiful document that my teacher created, if we can get that original source and have that sent to our student, yeah, I can go back through here and I can label the graphics. I can give it the alt text. I can make sure things come up. You know, I can do all that. So if we can encourage our teachers to give original sources, that's best. The other thing I want to encourage when you're looking at a document like this, because I got this off this website, this website has dynamic content. So here where it reads waves and particles, it keeps changing the reminder. So right now it says reminder, light is both particle and wave. Now it changed, reminder, light travels in straight, oh, what? I can't even read it as fast as it changes. So when you save it as a PDF, it did put all that information there. But if I were just extracting text from this website, I'm going to miss some of this content in these reminders, which these are key SOL elements for our 5th graders learning about this concept. Okay, so where was I? That's a good question. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. I'm sure you have lots of questions. I have lots of questions. This is just the beginning. If you want to learn more, there's plenty of resources out there to learn more and all that good stuff. So Karen, I can pass it over to you now.
Thank you. So hi, this is Karen Phipps, Director of Services for Children and Youth for the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired. I need to take one of Kim's classes because this is an ongoing struggle to make things accessible. And as you can imagine with the ending task, so I'm always sending things to Dr. Peggy Fields and reaching out to other folks to help me. Okay, so what you won't see in the PowerPoint is the fact that DVBI is still processing orders through the Library Resource Center. So we are going to have Donna Cox on the regional office calls. So make sure that you call into at least one of those if you have specific questions. And she's going to talk about the fact that you still need to send your orders in along with 2 books if you need things brailled, the usual routine. The other fact is, well, I also want to say that Donna and I can possibly emboss things for you, for your students, including tactile graphics, if that is an issue for you. So email me. I am coordinating with Donna to get that accomplished. Don't think if you send it one day, you'll have it the next because we have to work it in with the regular workload. So give us a week or 2 if you need that, but we are certainly here to help you with that. The education coordinators are also doing virtual intakes, assessments, and consultations and instruction with children, students, and families. So we're trying to get creative. We're asking, particularly for the assessments, we're asking parents to email us videos of students doing a variety of different things, as well as babies and infants. And then the ed coordinators are looking at that and then getting back to the parents. So we're trying to get creative in how we're rolling things out and continuing to provide a high level of service. I know that you all are struggling with the same issues. So we have some resources for you, and some of these you may have seen before, but we just wanted to make sure that they were available to you. Okay, Kim, next slide. So we have assistive technology, software, and applications. So as you all are probably aware, Freedom Scientific is giving free for JAWS and/or Fusion, and that's good through the end of June 30th. They also have videos on their Freedom Scientific products. So those are good resources also. HumanWare is doing exactly the same thing, and they're also doing live webinar series every Tuesday and Thursday to support Braille users. The only one that I included that has to be paid for is Type Ability. And that is designed by Yes Accessible, and it's an interactive typing and computer tutorial program that's designed, again, for users of JAWS, Zoom Text, and Fusion. So it teaches basic keyboarding skills, and there is special, but I've heard that that's a really great program. So it might be worth them doing that. Okay, next. Internet Archive, the National Emergency Library, and Bookshare. So the Internet Archive, the National Emergency Library, has opened up their collection, and they have millions of titles. So students can access the content in digital form. They're suspending the wait list through June, so students should be able to access those materials with a minimum of well, with no wait. And the link is embedded in Internet Archive, the National Emergency Library. Same for all of these titles. Also Bookshare, I know you know all about Bookshare. Skip that. Keep in mind that you have to have an account for Bookshare, and you should have that. Well, the TVI should have that and have the login information. If they can fill a form out, you as the TVI can sign it, or we can help with that and provide a statement of disability that will be proof of disability. Also, Audible is offering free access to audiobooks and streaming stories, and they are doing that in 6 different languages, which is fabulous. And that can be streamed, of course, on desktops, laptops, phones, or tablets. Also, and Learning Ally, again, you would have to, as the TVI, supply the log. And lastly, resource to go through you all, of course. Okay, past illiteracy, which everybody knows about, which is associated, well, it's sponsored by Perkins School. Fabulous activities, stay-at-home activities for children with visual impairments. They also have technology resources, and they have the virtual expanded core education learning Excel Academy for students with visual impairments. So they are doing a variety of different things for all levels of students. They are daily and they're hour-long virtual web classes, and they start at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Next. So we have Objective Ed, Accessibyte, Brain Pop, and Hadley discussion groups. Again, typically Objective Ed has a fee, but they, Marty is providing free access through the end of the school year. And it has a variety of different topics and allows students to access the expanded core curriculum material with skill building games for Braille, literacy, assistive technology, orientation, mobility, and some other topics. And then Accessibyte is also offering free access through the end of the current school year. And they have I went in and looked at the site. It's pretty interesting. They have some funky educational apps, including Typeo, which is the typing tutor. And again, this is for Windows, Mac, Chromebook, iOS, and Android devices. And Brain Pop is similar. Again, it's free access through the end of the current school year. And again, they have engaging educational apps. Hadley is also having discussion groups. You can access that either by your computer or calling in. They are monthly and weekly sessions. So they're doing a writer circle, a growing session, what's cooking, tech it out, a variety of different topics for all ages of students. National Homework Frontiers core curriculums, JAWS, MBDA, voiceover, etc. And it's open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. I have some seniors on my block, and there is a cavalcade of cars with signs. So we appreciate our seniors that can't go to graduation. Okay, next, please. All right, so we have some additional resources here. This is sort of a mix. Tracy DeLuca uses LibriVox, and that's free public domain audiobooks in a myriad of subjects for children as well as adults. I think you all who are early intervention information and resources for parents, primarily of young children with visual impairments. And it gives information on eye conditions, sensory activities, assistive technology, growth and development, which is important, as well as other related topics. And Storybox. So Wonder Baby has Storybox, but Paths to Literacy also has Storybox. So you can take a favorite book and make it into a story box of items, go with the story, and use textures that will help concept ideas. Braille Bug, which again teaches students in grade 3 through 6 about Braille. And then at VCU, the Center for Family Involvement, the Region 5 TTAC newsletter has like 6 pages of additional resources for families. So check that out as well. Next slide, please. And I wanted to let you all know, if you don't already, that the Virginia Rehab Center for the Blind and Vision Impaired has a series of conversations and trainings. So for example, tomorrow, they usually start at 2 o'clock. They last for an hour. They have PowerPoint non-visually. So Mike Fish is going to talk about using screen readers and demonstrate to create and navigate PowerPoint presentations. Next week, they're doing on Tuesday, they're doing a presentation on using Google Classroom. On Wednesday, a presentation on using ARIA, Be My Eyes, and Seeing AI. Thursday, a presentation on collaborating in the cloud. Friday, the 24th, taking notes like a pro. Tuesday, April the 28th, word basics. Thursday, April the 30th, intro to Excel. And May 1st, screen reader basics, searching the web. So there are a variety of different topics. Now, a lot of those, of course, are for older students, but I'm hoping that you have students or you yourself have already engaged in some of those trainings. I actually had to reach out to Greg Chittum during the training today for the URL because the one I had in here wasn't working correctly. So all these URLs should be accurate. So all you have to do is click on these and it will take you directly to the resources. So thank you so much for giving me this time. And if you have any questions or you need resources from DVBI, please don't hesitate to reach out to your ed coordinators or to me or to Donna Cox. Thanks, folks, for everything you're doing. Debbie?
Thanks, Karen. Well, this has been a lot of awesome information, and I know we're going through it kind of quickly, but you will all get this PowerPoint presentation, and you click on each of the links and follow them to these resources that we're just briefly detailing. I wanted to just say that we know that every school division has provided you with directives on the type of online lessons and also the content that you should be using with your students and families. We know that this really varies between school divisions. So please know that the resources that we're sharing today are for your use at your discretion and of course after reviewing them yourself. Okay, Wanda mentioned the Go Open Virginia resource, and I wanted to just go back to that for a minute to tell you that many of our 134 or 137 school divisions have put their plans online with lessons and things for special groups, including for students with blindness or visual impairment. And so some of them just have a lot of really wonderful resources, some of the ones we've mentioned and lots of other ones. I wanted to give a little shout out to Loudoun County because that was one of the ones that somebody directed me to because they did have some excellent resources for students who are blind and vision impaired, including things on accessibility, tactile learning activities, UEB practice in math and literary, listening skills, CBI, ECC, technology, and more. So you might want to just check out that Go Open Virginia. Okay, next slide. Kim addressed preparing the online learning and a learning environment for students to make it ergonomic. And some of the things I'm talking about now are to help you make providing lessons and educational training at home for parents a little more emotionally ergonomic. We've all seen the funny videos about parents complaining about having to teach their kids at home. They're not teachers. So some of the things I'm mentioning now, I think, are particularly family friendly. Most of you are familiar with described and captioned media programs, DCMP for short. DCMP, as you know, has over 6,000 videos or media, we used to call them films, that cover the 4 core subject areas as well as a lot of the ECC courses, expanded core curriculum at all grade levels. I think at this time when you're trying to provide things at home that the parents can do, sometimes I know having a child who excelled in science and math, once he got past about 8th grade, I wasn't very good at helping him with his homework. So sometimes you might be able to suggest that somebody use one of the videos that's described, even though the description may not be good enough for the child. If they sit down with a parent, it's a really great way for a parent to also learn the content and to be able to stop the video and talk about some of the vocabulary they're using and some of the concepts they're presenting. And this is really valuable for reviewing things that have been done in class over the year, or for covering some of the content that may have been missed at the end of the year, and also for pre-teaching vocabulary and concepts for SOLs that are going to be presented next year, so the student can have a better background knowledge for when they go in. It's something the whole family can sit down and watch. If you haven't been using these lately, the teacher can create student accounts for groups of students and recommend particular videos that they see for maybe summer viewing instead of summer reading, or in addition to summer reading, or the parents can also set up a student account and they can be viewed at the student's leisure. Okay, next slide. Along with more movies and media, there is a blog online called The Deafblind Life. Many different people send in their information or stories about themselves or things they've done. This is really more for older children. And again, this is something that you should preview and that parents might want to preview. There are podcasts called The Tactile Traveler, put together by Nick Eisenberg, Blind Like Me. And again, this is tech information and podcasts to help those who are blind or visually impaired, just in comparing their life with others. Others are sharing their experiences. The TED Talks that are mentioned here on the previous page and this next page they're not particular to blindness or visual impairment, but they were recommended by the California School for the Blind for use with kids to talk about things like motivation, living the good life, lessons based on a study that was actually done, the longest study ever done on happiness, living beyond limits, success in a continuous journey. Some of these people have been challenged with different illnesses or challenges in their life one way or another, and they talk about how they surpass those, or just maybe even be good just to talk about with parents, might motivate parents as well. So, okay, next slide. I looked at a few of these and they're just awesome. As I was going through and doing this webinar presentation, developing things, you really get lost in some of these sites. Okay. Beyond that, there's Netflix, Pick of the Litter, some just different shows that have been particularly encouraging that were recommended. Next. I don't know, if you work with young children, there are so many activities online that you can find. Hi Mama is for infants through elementary, and they have lots and lots of craft activities. One of the good things is if you're sending home packets, like for some parents who may not have access to online resources, they have downloadable, really user-friendly directions and things. Of course, when you do things like that, you have to think about the resources that they have at home and the materials for doing crafts. The San Diego Zoo one is really a live look at the San Diego Zoo. You can see animals on webcams live and videos about animals, crafts, activities, and games, all about animals. It's a little different than some of the educational videos that you see. Farm Food 360 is another one that's kind of unique. You can watch videos watching a real farm in Canada and see how food is processed. So a lot of kids don't realize where we get our milk from or how cheese is made or where cotton comes from. And the child can actually control the camera and see 360 in the environment. The National Geographic website is really fascinating. If you haven't been to it in the past, um, it just covers a lot of interesting things about geography, different lands and cultures and people, lots of interesting things that the whole family can sit down and enjoy and really learn from. And the Highlights for Kids website is like the Highlight magazine that we used to all enjoy, with hidden pictures, exploring science questions, sharing jokes and riddles, craft activities, etc. So some really fun things to suggest for using at home if you feel like that's a good thing for that family. Next slide. Scholastic was mentioned before, and that is they're giving day-by-day projects for kids, so you might be able to use some of those. Go Noodle kind of is a segue into the next section on orientation mobility that can be done remotely for little kids who are feeling wiggly. There's lots and lots of songs and dances and exercises for when they're stuck inside or to take outside and do. Next. So orientation mobility, there are a lot of online resources for remote virtual O&M services. Karen mentioned Objective Ed, and I'm sure you've all been inundated with emails from Marty Schultz on Objective Ed. They do have a couple of really basic O&M games. One that was out first, Barnyard, helping students to navigate their way through a barnyard using directionality concepts, and now they come out with Wayfinder. That helps students go beyond that and develop some mental mapping skills and wayfinding skills. iFree Fitness is an audio exercise program. It was actually developed by a woman who is sighted, who thought that people shouldn't have to be watching the person in front of them while they're trying to do the movements that that person's doing. It's free right now for downloading. It's good for young children, old children, adults. All of the programs are thoroughly described, and they include things like yoga, Pilates, weightlifting, bar method for people like Karen who does ballet, stretching and meditations. Next. This is, if you click on the heading here, Parent-Led Mobility Activities, the Utah School for the Deaf and Blind. My colleague Brandon, who's the outreach director there, shared this site. It has about 100 or more videos teaching different O&M techniques for all different ages, K through 12, and they're actually divided into skill levels. I didn't want to try to go to the actual websites for the sake of time, so I just copied the screen and put it here so you can get an idea. It's kind of small to see, but grades 4 through 6, they have all kinds of O&M skills for that grade level. And on the other side, there's calendar with activities for each day, and they have a theme for each month. This month is umbrella concepts for going outside in the rain, listening to sounds, feeling things, and again, some very family-friendly kinds of activities. Next. This was from a live binder, Techniques for Remote O&M and Other Instructions from the Texas School for the Blind. Again, a colleague of mine there shared this with a listserv that I'm on. 7 pages of links to resources. So if you follow that link at the top, you can go in and see just all kinds of links to resources for remote O&M instruction. Next. You may have gotten this email. I think it came out from Cynthia Ingraham, but Helen Keller National Center is offering free online courses until May 31st. These courses are for students or for professionals. They usually pay for these anywhere from $19 to $89.99. Some do not offer any contact hours. Some offer CEUs through ACVREP. Or other organizations. So I did contact Cynthia to ask her if she'd like us to provide the coupon code, so each of you didn't have to contact her, but they actually do want each of you to contact her. So her email address is right there. Go on their website and check them out. There are lots of great online modules that you can do. Next. Some other, just a few brief resources for students with deaf blindness. The North Dakota Dual Sensory Project shared, we already covered this, audible stories. Again, these are being offered free right now. And they come, again, titles across 6 languages, set up for really young children through teens and really easy to navigate. You can stream them to your desktop, laptop, phone, or tablet. Next. And then if you do have children with deaf blindness who use American Sign Language, here are some resources for that. We at VSDB developed some lessons in ASL using Patty Cook, one of our paraprofessionals who is deaf, with lots of lessons following them by Rhonda Jennings Eyre on how to read stories in ASL and what is the developmental hierarchy of ASL for children. American Society for Deaf Children has provided some resources also on how to read and sign a story. And then there's one that you use with the QR codes with over 180 sign stories for independent and shared viewing. And next, another resource from American Society for Deaf Children, huge ASL stories directory, and it divides it into age groups. Some of them have the title more than once, and it shows different people signing the same story, which is really interesting for people who are learning ASL. I know some school divisions are encouraging teachers to use some of their time at home to do professional development or develop skills that they don't have. And so this would be equally good for professionals who want to develop their ASL skills. Okay, and the last slide. DPAN catalog is more for older children. That's the deaf professionals in art. Hello? Oh, I was hearing an echo, I guess. DPAN is Deaf Professional Arts Network. There are many, many stories in ASL on that, as well as art activities and things done by deaf artists. American Society for Deaf Children talks about making a tactile experience book. And then Described and Captioned Media, which I already spoke about, has over 28 videos for teaching ASL, particularly to families, so using the vocabulary used during the normal daily routine and for others. I am going to be offering a webinar, Wanda and I, next week probably. We're going to send out the date and registration information, similar to this one, but for people working with children who are deaf or hard of hearing. And if you are one of those people who works with both in both areas or has a child with deaf blindness and you want some more resources in the area of deafness, please email me and I'll make sure I include you in that list when we send those out. So right now we're going to open this up for just a few minutes. I think we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. And Kim,
Debbie, hi, excuse me. Debbie, I didn't mean to interrupt. This is Wanda. I did want to ask if we could allow Cindy George from Ames, Virginia, who's been on the phone, and she had some information as she was listening and going, hearing the information and some information that might be helpful. So if I could ask if we could right now just allow Cindy a minute or two to discuss with regard to resources through Ames, Virginia, and how that might help in getting access to some materials right now. So Cindy, if you can go ahead and unmute your phone and provide an update for us. And I might have lost Cindy. Okay, sorry about that. Let me see if I can get her on. If you want to go ahead and see if we can take some questions now, Debbie.
Okay.
While I try to connect with Cindy.
Kim, can you tell us how a person will ask their questions, how we can cue them so that we can unmute them? Or
so they can raise their hand in their hold on, I'm doing a screen share, so I need to go because I actually use Ultra most of the time. So WebEx is another tool that Mason provides for us, but I couldn't put you all in my classroom for Ultra. So yeah, there's a raise hand feature that you can use. And then there's also the chat. And then if people on the phone, if you want to text me, I will give you my phone number. You can text me your question 703-200-3388, or you can email me your question at kavila@gmu.edu.
Kim, to raise their hand, they would just raise it and we would see it as a raised hand near their name in participants. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have to go over to participants really quick
and find everybody. I can look at that one if you want.
Yeah, okay, so it looks like Becky Hayden has her hand up. Hi, Becky. And you have to unmute. You can do a Control M or you can click on the mute.
Yeah.
That was the only hand I see. You can chat in too. Okay, so Amy said, I heard that certain subscriptions to Google Docs are FERPA compliant. If you have G Suite, okay. Oh, wait, hold on. I got to scroll way down. You can enter a question in chat. Yes.
And I'm not seeing the hands raised in,
Yeah, I had to scroll through. I see. Okay, Rhonda, do you have your hand up?
mm-mm.
If anybody wants to go on Ultra with me, I also have a website, a VI Consortium YouTube channel that I show how we put our Ultra links in our classes and everything like that, just so if you are using that platform. Oh, someone on with a question? Okay.
This is Kim. This is Wanda again. I think we may have a yeah, Cindy had just texted me. She was on the phone, and it appears that if you have called in and you're not connected through the internet, then she's able to hear, but we're not able to hear her. And I don't know if that's affecting someone else.
So actually, if you can
Mhm.
text me what her phone number is, I had to mute everybody because we had this awful echo that we were all going to get migraines. So that
Yeah.
is correct. And if you can just text me what her phone number is, because I can unmute her
Okay.
from manually from the system.
Okay.
Sorry, Cindy.
All righty. I will do that right now. And
Yeah,
I
just text me the
apologize
first.
to everyone.
Like,
Okay.
yeah. So sorry about that, Cindy, if you're able to hear. Yeah, I had to mute everybody. And that's something
Okay.
we have to do so I have to do that sometimes in my classes. I have to mute people because I've heard everything from people making dinner to toilets flushing, which I'm like, okay. So if you are teaching through a web conference, you can mute everybody. If you're the moderator, you can disable chat, you can do things like that. And do be prepared for in the classroom, we have to deal with behaviors. We have to deal with behaviors online too. And yeah, you can silence everybody. Yes, you can shut down the chat feature, but then you have to deal with the technology problems. So either way, we're dealing with, disruption. So you just have to be really flexible with that. I always like to have a lot of backup choices and options. I'm fully prepared to record my classes if I need to, if our internet fails. Okay, Wanda, were you able to send me her so I can?
Yes, I just sent it to you.
I didn't see the text message come in.
Okay. I just sent it about.
Oh, here we go. I've got it. Okay.
Got it?
Let's see.
Okay.
All right, Cindy, I'm going to look for yours. Okay, I think I found it. Okay, Cindy, I think I unmuted you. You want to try talking?
Hello.
Hi, Cindy. Yay.
Hi,
Yay.
Kim. Hi,
Hi.
Wanda. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say something, obviously, very quickly, because I want you to be able to get out in 4 minutes. But Kim was talking about all the wonderful ways that some of the documents can be adapted and how you make documents accessible. And I just wanted you to know that's exactly what AIM Virginia does. And if you are stuck at this point, I know that most school divisions are shipping out worksheets all over the place for our students. And a lot of those worksheets, whether they are electronic or paper, are not accessible for some of our SPED kids. And so if you happen to want to join AIM Virginia as an educator, and you do that by going to our aimva.org, aimva.org website, please do. We have been doing email blasts. Our email blast just last week was about all of the discount and free internet service providers in the state of Virginia and what they're doing right now across the state so that different divisions that are in different places can locate how to get their students that are low income or do not have internet service online so they can participate in distance learning. We really are trying to ramp up. We're going to be bringing in worksheets from all divisions and having them come in, making them accessible and having them available for our eligible students, our SPED students. So please call our help desk. Francis is there waiting, And I think that Wanda probably gave that phone number and the email. The email is better because it's more of a direct link since our help desk person is banned from George Mason's campus, as Kim said. But we do have access to the phones. It just takes a little longer to get back to you. So that's all I wanted to say. Hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank you
Cindy.
so much, Cindy. Appreciate it.
I'm going to wrap up. I want to just direct everybody's attention in the chat box to Amanda Thompson's reminder about Virginia Deafblind Educators Community Web Call next Thursday, April 23rd at 7:30, where they're doing a roundtable discussion, and they're going to be sharing resources, and you can share yours as well, on working with children with deaf blindness. Also, be on the lookout for VSDB Outreach Services sending out information about more courses from Perkins and access to archived webinars that have been shown over the last few years for contact hours. So right now, I would like to thank, first of all, Kim Avila, and for hosting this on WebEx. My GoToWebinar isn't working right, and they came to the rescue, and Corey Singleton for his help. To Wanda Council and Kim and Karen Phipps for their wonderful presentations, and also to Cavalier Cart, Larry Linebrink and Rhonda Tuck, who provided the cart. You weren't seeing the cart, nobody had requested it, but we will be able to post a transcript with this when we record it and post it. So, and thank you guys, thank you so much for what you do every day with the kids and with the families. We wish you the very best. Everybody stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
all.
You too.
And if
Everybody, bye-bye.
Thank you. And if our cart people can just
Thank
stay on for
you.
1 minute, because I want to make sure that I have the right directions to close out. So let me just pause recording really quick.
And could I get your email address?